Parents, do this activity with your kids. Hi, I'm Miss Ann. I'm a reading specialist, and my YouTube channel is dedicated to giving you tips and tricks on how to get your kids reading. This writing activity today is going to help with your child's reading and, of course, with their writing too. Reading and writing is kind of like the same skill, only one's going forwards and one's going backwards. With reading, you are decoding, which means you're looking at letters on a paper in a book and you're thinking, what sound does that make? And you're blending them together. For writing, you're encoding. You're thinking about the word, you're stretching it out, you're listening for individual sounds, and how do we spell those sounds? I found that struggling readers, especially when they're in the early stages, really benefit from writing practice. It helps them with their reading. Here's an activity to get you started.
Okay, so to get started, I want you to read your child a book. Any book. Whatever book you and your child want to read together. Here's an example. Little Red Riding Hood. So if I were to use this book, first thing I would do is I would read the book to my child. And I would ask questions, just like you're already probably doing. But this time, you're going to write the answer. Let me give you an example. After reading Little Red Riding Hood, I might ask, what would you do if you met the wolf? Or, what color flowers would you have picked for Grandma? Or, what kind of cake do you think Little Red Riding Hood should have brought?
Okay, so you've asked your questions. Now what? All right, so let's say that your child's really excited about that cake. All right, and they might say, I would like a chocolate cake. There's your sentence. That's where you're going to start. That's what you're going to write. So all your child needs to be able to do to write this sentence is to be able to form a few letters. They don't even need that many letters because every time you do it, they'll learn more letters and more sounds. But let's start with the basics. That sentence is overwhelming, so we need to break it down into words. I would like a chocolate cake. How many words are in that sentence? Ask your child that. Don't pressure them. If they don't know it, you need to show them how to figure it out. So one of the best ways to do it is to clap it out. I would like a chocolate cake. And then have them count. I would like a chocolate cake. So that sentence has 6 words in it.
All right, so now we go back to our dry erase board, our whiteboard, or you can use a piece of paper. I like to use a whiteboard because anything I write, lines, marks that I make as I'm talking to the child, I can erase it really easily and quickly. All right, so we said we have 6 words in our sentence. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, I ran out of room. I need to come down to the next line. 5, 6. And you can add your punctuation at this point. You can read this sentence with your child. I would like a chocolate cake. Now, first problem you're going to run into is your child's going to want to put one letter on each line. All right, they'll get used to that. Just help them. All right, so we're going to start with I, and it always sounds like a trick question. How do we spell I? The letter I. And tell your child that we always, when I is a word by itself, there's no other letters, it's always capital. I. Our next word is a little bit longer and trickier. If your child is just beginning, try to get the first sound or the last sound. And don't worry too much about the middle sounds. Would. Would. If they're really struggling, ask them, give them the first sound. Woo. Woo. How do we spell woo? Woo. If they're not sure, you can help them and tell them W. and you can move on to the next word. If your child's more advanced, try to get the ending sound. Would, would. The middle part is a part we learn by heart. And once you know how to spell would, you can spell would and could and should. All right, you don't have to fill this in at this point if your child doesn't know it, but we will fill it in. We don't want them to think that would is spelled just with the W and a D. But at this point, we just want to get them listening for sounds. I would like. Listen for that beginning sound. How do we spell it? Like. I would ask, when usually our child will say right away, I here. So we'll write that down together. I'm not writing it down for them. I don't have a child here, so I'm writing it down for you. But have your child write it down. Let them do it. So if your child says I here, ask them what sound that I is making. Is it I or I? If they say I, then say, well, I can't just make that say its name by itself. It's going to need to follow one of our rules, like our silent letter at the end. So we can go ahead and put in our silent E. Like. How do we spell k? If they say C here, that's okay. Write it down. We will fix it. We don't want them to think that this is how we spell like. All right, but they are correct. C makes the k sound. But we'll talk about that later. All right, so let's say you go through the whole sentence, all the words with your child, and when you're done, it looks something like this. After that, I like to do what we call grown-up writing. And I show them how I would write it, and I let them know what a good job they did hearing all these sounds, but I review it with the rules. So I have I, we're going to do capital I here. I is always capital when it's a word by itself. Would, you got the beginning sound and the ending sound. Very good job. In the middle, though, we do have to learn that by heart, and it's O-U-L. That'll come very easily to them with a little bit of practice. Not today in this first sentence. If they didn't get it today, couple sentences, a couple times writing would, and they'll be able to spell would and could and should. I would like. You have a C here for that k sound. What other letter makes the k sound? That's right, K. We're going to use K here. That's because when C has an E after it, it makes the sound S. When we have a silent E, we always spell K with a K. I would like. And again, repetition every time you write a sentence. These rules, they'll remember them. I would like a. And this time the A is lowercase. I is always capital. A is always lowercase when it's a word by itself unless it's the first word. I would like chocolate. If they're very young, they might not know what sound, how to spell that sound. You might have to help them and say, yeah, it sounds a lot like I'm making the sound in the same part of my mouth as This has my voice on. All right, we want though. CH is how we spell chocolate. And then chocolate. You could talk about how chocolate, we don't say the middle syllable, most people. Chocolate. And you can point out, wow, what a great job. You heard that C, you heard that T. Chocolate. Cake. A. What sound is that A making? Is it short or long? Is it saying its name? A or A? Cake. It's saying its name. So just like in like up here, we're going to add our silent E. And what letter do we use to spell k when there's a silent E? Let's look at our like up here. What letter did we use for k? Yes, K is always used when there's a silent E. And there's our period. And then ask your child to read the sentence back to you. Now, normally this might be a sentence that's too hard for them, but they just wrote it. So there's a good chance they're going to be able to read it. They might need some help. And you make sure they point, I would. And make sure that if you're pointing for them, you're pointing at the right letters that are making the sounds. Would. Like. This is good practice for sounding out. I would like a chocolate cake. All right. So that worked out really well. It's really good practice. They're hearing the sounds, they're writing them down.
They're learning those sounds by encoding them instead of decoding them, and then they decoded them to read the sentence back to you. And there's room here. They could draw a picture of chocolate cake. Maybe you could go eat some chocolate cake, or write another sentence. Keep them in a notebook, and you'll be amazed at how much, after a few months, they've grown in their writing. All you need is one sentence without any pressure, just what they hear, and they'll learn a little bit every time. But stay gentle with them. Don't force correct them, because it's going to become too tedious for them. Just have them do what they're capable of doing, and then maybe just a little bit more, where you're explaining just a little bit more. But of course, at the end, you do want to explain and have it written here so that they know that in blue here, this is how it's spelled. You don't want to teach them this other invented spelling. You don't want to teach them that. But you do want them to practice breaking down words and listening to sounds. And they will grow a little bit each week. Don't expect them to grow everything all in 1 week. That's too much. They're going to learn a little bit this week or today, and maybe a little bit more tomorrow, and a little bit more next week, and a little bit more the time after that, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. Little bite-sized pieces. They can't learn all the rules of spelling this sentence in one sitting. It's too much. If they don't know any of the rules, that's too much. If they only make 1 or 2 mistakes, then maybe that's the right amount for them to learn. Maybe they can write it almost 100% correct after one sentence. But if they're very beginning and wrote it the way I wrote it in the pink, then they're going to need practice. And they're only going to need little corrections. And maybe like in chocolate, I didn't go over all the rules in chocolate because there was too many. It's overwhelming. But I did write it correctly. All right, and if chocolate was the only word that the child got wrong, then I would go through chocolate and make sure that they understood the correct way and the rules on why we spell it the way we do. All right, so just remember, try to keep it low stress, low pressure. Please let me know if you have any questions about this process, and let me know if you want to do it with me again. All right, and I'll see you soon. And if you do want any help, I have classes. I have specific classes on OutSchool where I do writing to learn to read. This technique, I do this in my classes. Check out the description for links to all of my classes, specifically these writing classes. And let me know if you have any questions. And I hope I see you on OutSchool and on YouTube. So like and subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow.